Alaska's Bristol Bay is a sprawling watershed of winding streams and rivers, vast wetlands and tundra, forests of alder and spruce, and home to a variety of fish, birds and terrestrial animals. This breathtaking place is rightly referred to as America's fish basket, because it is one of the most productive marine ecosystems in the world and home to the world's largest salmon fishery. Bristol Bay is a national treasure that needs to be protected. Learn more about this incredible place that WWF is working hard to save. The Bristol Bay watershed provides vital habitat for 29 fish species, more than 190 bird species, and more than 40 terrestrial animals. Bald eagles, moose, brown bears, rainbow trout, freshwater seals, Pacific walrus, North Pacific right whales and beluga whales all live in the region. Bristol Bay is the most productive salmon ecosystem in North America, and it is unmatched in its productivity. All 5 species of Pacific salmon, sockeye, chinook, coho, chum, and pink, spawn and rear in the Bristol Bay watershed, supporting wildlife like brown bears and eagles, as well as human industry and culture. The watershed supports the largest sockeye salmon run in the world, producing about 46% of the world's wild sockeye harvest. The fishery is valued at more than $1.5 billion and provides nearly 20,000 jobs throughout the United States annually. Over 4,000 locals, including many native Yupik and Dena'ina, rely on fish, moose, and other subsistence foods for 80% of their protein. Today, the world's Arctic regions, including Bristol Bay, are warming faster than practically anywhere else on Earth. Warming stream temperatures and reduced water flows from dwindling winter snows may ultimately threaten the survival of salmon eggs and fry. Left unchecked, rising sea level could inundate vast areas of highly productive habitat on land. The bay also faces another threat, the Pebble Mine project. Pebble Mine is a proposed open-pit gold and copper mine. The Pebble Mine deposit is located at the headwaters of the Bristol Bay watershed, beneath Bristol Bay's 2 most productive river systems in a seismically active region. Developers want to dig a mine that is 1 mile wide and 1/4 mile deep, leading to the destruction of 3,000 acres of wetlands and more than 21 miles of salmon streams. The scar on Alaska's pristine, productive environment would be visible from space. This summer, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers took action to delay a final decision on the Pebble Mine amid concerns about significant degradation to aquatic resources in the Bristol Bay area. WWF has been partnering with in-region organizations to build community and village support and a longer-term branding initiative to support a sustainable economy into the future. WWF has also advocated with the U.S. government about how important Bristol Bay is to Alaska and the rest of the U.S. This has been a decade-long battle, and in the last 5 years alone, more than 500,000 Americans have joined WWF in urging the U.S. government to stop the Pebble Mine from moving forward. We cannot stop our fight to protect Bristol Bay, Alaska. Alaska is known as the salmon capital of the world, and it is truly the one. Some of the best salmons are produced in the waters of Alaska. It is the only place on Earth with the maximum number of salmons. For anglers who want to catch these superior quality salmon fishing in Alaska, there is no better place than Alaska. But Alaska in the United States is huge, and over 12,000 rivers flow across this area. So, where will you cast the line if you have plans to fish salmons in Alaska? Don't stress, we will guide you to find the best destination for salmon fishing. Which is the best destination in Alaska for salmon fishing? When speaking about the best place for salmon fishing in Alaska, we have to accept the Kenai River is the one. Kenai River is one of the best places to catch salmon fishing. Kenai River has the honor of 8 out of 10 largest salmon even caught by human beings using rods and reels. So, this undoubtedly becomes one of the best places to catch salmons. The river is located in south-central Alaska on the Kenai Peninsula of the state. Nowhere else in Alaska will you find a place so scenic and productive to cast your line and catch a salmon than Kenai. The aqua-blue water surrounded by the snow-clad mountains forms a mesmerizing background for the anglers hoping to hook some fresh catch. The outstanding Chinook or the king salmon and sockeye mostly fill the water of the Kenai River. Though 4 out of 5 varieties of salmon thrive in this turquoise blue water, the king salmon draws the most interest. In short, summertime in Alaska is the ideal season to fish for salmon. In the last frontier, the best time to go salmon fishing is from May to the end of September. The 5 main salmon species are most likely to be caught at this time, each at a different moment. Depending on the region and species, the salmon run usually begins in April or May and lasts into the fall. The quantity and timing of the run vary from year to year, with the largest flows occurring in July and August. The Kenai Peninsula in south-central Alaska is home to the Kenai River. The river is the most well-liked sport fishing location in the state and is special for Chinook, often called king salmon. The 97-pound world record king salmon was captured in the Kenai in 1985. In addition, to rainbow and cutthroat trout, Alaska is home to 7 different species of Pacific salmon, including Chinook, sockeye, pink, coho, and chum. The typical salmon species vary in price, color, and flavor. While chums are smaller fish utilized for canned or smoked salmon and are fantastic value options, coho is gentler and frequently lighter in color. Sockeye salmon has a strong, distinct flavor, but coho salmon has a more delicate flavor. Sockeye salmon contains more calories than coho salmon in terms of nutritional value. When compared to coho salmon, it has less vitamin B12 but more protein, omega-3 fatty acids, and vitamin D. Copper River king salmon, sometimes called the Wagyu of salmon, may fetch up to $120 per pound. Chefs lust for this salmon because of its deep, buttery flavor, but it is not readily available. It must swim 300 miles between glaciers to arrive at its ultimate destination in Alaska's Copper River. The Kvichak, Naknek, Wagashik, Agegik, and Neshagik rivers that run into Bristol Bay in Alaska and the Fraser River system in Canada are home to the highest numbers of sockeye salmon. These flows can contain tens of millions of fish in excellent years. The Kenai Peninsula of south-central Alaska is home to the Kenai River. The river is undoubtedly the most well-liked sport fishing location in the state for Chinook, often referred to as king salmon. The 97-pound world record king salmon was captured in the Kenai in 1985. The salmon capital of the world is Ketchikan, Alaska. It has a robust commercial fishing business and is a hub for salmon fishing. The town is well known for its salmon population, and every July and August, salmon runs take place in Ketchikan Creek. Many believe that king salmon, or Chinook salmon, Oncorhynchus charwicha, has the finest flavor of all the salmon species. This by Alaska's 2024 salmon season officially opened on Thursday the 16th of May, with the kickoff of the Copper River sockeye fishery. The 2024 commercial harvest forecasts for the Copper River District, located in the Prince William Sound region, are 1.3 million sockeye salmon, 46% above the 10-year average of 893,000 fish, and 47,000 Chinook, which is 2% below the 10-year average of 48,000 fish. However, the inside closure area of the Chinook fishery will be closed during early season fishing periods for conservation purposes and may be expanded early in the season to include waters inside the barrier islands east of Coffee Creek, according to Alaska Fish News. The day was also marked by the announcement from Silver Bay Seafoods that it will pay a base price of 80 United States cents, 74 euro cents, per pound for unchilled sockeye salmon caught in Bristol Bay and 1 United States dollar and 10 cents, 1 euro and 1 cent, per pound for chilled Bristol Bay sockeye, plus a bonus for bled fish. In 2023, base prices for Bristol Bay salmon weren't announced until July, and the season sported some of the lowest prices in recent times at an average of 52 United States cents, 48 euro cents, per pound, according to data from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. We are clearly optimistic about the Alaska salmon industry. Silver Bay has expanded our programs statewide, Silver Bay Seafoods CEO Cora Campbell told National Fishermen. The seafood industry has faced challenges before, and as an industry, we have proven ourselves to be resilient and innovative. At the end of the day, our industry is about harvesting and processing a natural, wild, healthy protein that feeds the world. Looking forward, we believe that core value proposition will overcome any short-term economic or market conditions. The latest forecast from the Alaska Department of Fish and Game predicts the 2024 commercial salmon harvest in the U.S. state will bring in nearly 136 million salmon, a significant drop from the surge of fish harvested in 2023. Commercial harvesters brought in just over 232 million salmon across all species in 2023, which was 43 million, or 23%, more than the pre-season forecast of 189 million fish. Pink salmon made up more than half of the 2023 catch, with 155 million fish harvested. Sockeye was the next top species, with 52 million fish harvested. However, the department is predicting a decrease in the overall salmon catch for the 2024 season, primarily due to a much smaller pink salmon harvest. The government report indicates that there will be nearly 86 million fewer pink salmon harvested in 2024, with just 69 million in the forecast. The report also predicts 40 million sockeye, 24 million chum, and 3 million coho salmon will be harvested in Alaska in 2024. The report notes that there is a great deal of uncertainty in forecasting pink salmon returns, due to their short lifespan and other factors. Despite the massive harvest in 2023, the Alaska seafood sector has been roiled by low prices and demand. Several major processing plants have been closed or sold over the last several months as processors consolidate operations. Most notably, Silver Bay is set to take over Peter Pan Seafood's Alaska business and is already operating some of its facilities for the 2024 season. Alaska lawmakers voted to establish a seafood industry task force this month to address those concerns and many others, as the state's seafood sector faces these multiple crises. Alaska's seafood industry is in a tailspin from facing unprecedented challenges, the legislation sponsors wrote when introducing the task force earlier this year, according to the Alaska Beacon. Alaskan fishermen, processors, processing workers, and support businesses are challenged with extremely low prices, plant sales and closures, lost markets, credit concerns, and foregone fishing opportunities. The hit to Alaska's economy in 2023 alone is estimated to be 2 billion United States dollars, 1.8 billion euros. Most Alaskans know that commercial fishing is very important to the economy of our state. A small number of folks understand the ins and outs of a commercial gillnet operation. Fewer still understand what a set net fishery is. When one speaks of the gillnet fishery, the picture that comes to mind is one of a picturesque vessel with a long line of glistening white floats strung out behind. That is a semi-accurate depiction. The set net fishery bears little resemblance to that picture. This is a fairly typical Bristol Bay set net operation at mid-tide. It's a 20-foot aluminum skiff powered by a 40-horsepower outboard motor, but larger skiffs are becoming more common. Photo by John Schandelmeyer. Set netting is hard, dirty work, at least in Bristol Bay. If you are wearing name-brand rain gear, few would recognize it because it would be covered in mud. Snaps break, zippers stick, your socks are wet in chest waders that are leaking from fish pick holes and general wear. If that sounds like fun, then the uninitiated need to know that it costs $150,000 to $200,000 for the privilege to be a set netter and fish from the beach. All commercial salmon fisheries in Alaska are limited entry fisheries. That means there are a limited number of permits that can be bought and sold, somewhat similar to a liquor license. A set net is just like it sounds. A net that is anchored in place. The general description I provide here varies somewhat around the state, and indeed, there is variance within Bristol Bay. Dakota Tennant, a member of John Schandelmeyer's crew, picks salmon from a net and puts them in a brailer, which is offloaded to a cannery fish tender to be refrigerated. The average delivery time is well under 3 hours. Photo by John Schandelmeyer. Net length within Bristol Bay varies between 25 and 50 fathoms. A fathom equals 6 feet. The net is set near shore on land that is connected to the beach at low tide. The inside end is usually a screw anchor, like those used to hold anchoring lines on power poles, that is cranked. The outside end of is held by either a stationary anchor or a throw anchor capable of holding firm in a strong tide. Bristol Bay has some of the strongest tides in the world. It takes every good anchor to hold a net with 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of fish in it against a 25-foot tide. Because the bay is so shallow, many of the river estuaries go completely dry at low tide. Incoming tides may only have 4 hours instead of the usual 6 to complete the transition from low water to high. Tide speeds of 8 miles per hour are common. There are old set netters with missing fingers whose hands got caught in lines. Why do some choose to set rather than drift? That question has as many answers as there are fishermen. Hard, dirty work though it may be, setting has a few less monetary risks than drifting. A 20-foot skiff with a dead outboard motor can be back in business within the hour. A drift boat with an engine down could cost a season. Some dislike the competitive nature of drift fishing in favored locations. They prefer that hard work yield their results rather than having to push a bit. Still others cite the initial cost of a set net operation as the deciding factor. You can get into stationary fishing for about half of the price of a drift operation. Salmon fishing for sockeye is almost over in Bristol Bay. Most fishers are headed for home, although there will be a few die-hard scratching for the last few sockeye. Most of them will be local guys fishing for limited markets. There are also a few fishermen who have made arrangements to process and sell their own catch. In Bristol Bay, where the red salmon return is in the tens of millions, the needs of subsistence, sport and commercial fisheries are small. Bristol Bay is the state's most valuable salmon fishery. 38 million sockeye were caught there last summer and another 19 million, millions more than were needed for spawning, went up regional rivers and streams. Non-commercial interests couldn't have caught all the surplus even if they'd tried. What is the case for the bay would also be largely the case for most of Prince William Sound, which each year gets swarmed with tens of millions of hatchery pink salmon little desired by non-commercial fishermen. Meanwhile, king salmon in the Kuskokwim River in western Alaska are already fully allocated to subsistence fishermen, the commercial king fishery there having died long ago. And commercial fisheries for the other species of Cusco salmon are small. But there are other fisheries, some in southeast, others in Cook Inlet and on the Copper River in eastern Alaska, that could be radically altered by a proposal like Somerville's. The commercial catch of sockeye in Cook Inlet last year was 1.8 million fish, according to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. It was the lowest catch in 10 years, but it was still about twice the sockeye harvest by subsistence, sport and personal use fishermen. The numbers for the latter catches aren't in yet, but they are expected to total about 1 million. One of the biggest components of the non-commercial sockeye catch is the Kenai River personal use dip net fishery, which suffered last year because of the efforts of Fish and Game to use commercial nets to crop off the early return of Kenai reds. And then there were the Matanuska-Susitna Borough streams and rivers at the head of the inlet. They are at the mercy of commercial nets from Homer North. Fishermen of all sorts in the Mat-Su ended up with only a tiny fraction of the 1.2 million salmon over and above the sockeye harvest caught by commercial nets in the inlet. Sport, personal use and subsistence data for the entire inlet is still being compiled, but the total catch for all these fisheries is unlikely to climb above 1.5 million. At that level, the math puts the commercial catch at 66% or more and everyone else at 33% or less. Non-commercial fishermen in and around Cook Inlet have for years been complaining they don't get their fair share of the region's salmon. Somerville suggested that in fisheries covered by limited entry regulations, commercial interests cannot be allocated more than 50% of a harvestable stock or stocks unless the other common property, non-commercial users, including licensed non-resident users, are unable to utilize the remainder of the harvestable stock or stocks. Such a proposal is given little chance of going anywhere soon in the Alaska legislature, where commercial fishing interests have long held sway, but the 49th state has changed significantly since limited entry was instituted in the early 1970s. The limited entry proposal, to which Somerville referred as a state constitutional amendment Alaskans approved in 1972 to allow a cap to be placed on the number of people allowed to commercial fish in the 49th state. Out of that came the state's limited entry law. It laid the groundwork to control the number of fishermen participating in various state fisheries. The program began with setting permit levels. It then scored fishermen on the basis of their histories and investments in the fisheries and handed out free permits to those with the highest scores. The permits became the property of the commercial fishermen to whom they were first awarded. Not many stayed with their original honors. The ink was hardly dry on the limited entry law before fishermen were busy buying and selling permits. They are now constantly on the market. A Bristol Bay drift gillnet permit goes for $160,000 to $170,000, a Southeast Seine permit for $250,000. They are at the upper end of the range. A Norton Sound herring permit can be bought for only $1,000, but harvests in the fishery are low, and the fish are not worth much. Alaska Boats and Permits, a permit brokerage, at the moment list dozens of permits for sale. Permit prices have fluctuated wildly over the years, but as more and more have moved into the hands of people who invested significant amounts of money to buy them, the pressure from commercial fishermen to maintain the lion's share of the Alaska catch has steadily intensified. Those fishermen argue that it's not fair to shift catches from long-established commercial fisheries to subsistence, personal use and sport fisheries just because the Alaska population is growing, and tourism has become a viable business in the north. Non-commercial interests counter that it's not fair to give commercial fishing interests 95% of the state's fish just because commercial fishermen can afford expensive permits and high-paid lobbyists. Of late, the commercial interests have been winning the debate. In March of last year, the Board of Fish shifted some of the Cook Inlet salmon catch from non-commercial interests to commercial interests, with Board Chairman John Jensen observing that he wanted to allocate some more fish to the commercial fishermen who, in my opinion, gave them up. The catch has been driven in part by onerous bag limits on rod and reel caught halibut in the southeast region and in part by shifting culinary standards. Chef Gabriela Kamara made rockfish ceviche and black cod adobo tacos. The black cod had been wrapped in fibers from cactus leaves, buried and pit-cooked with the cactus. It was rich and smoky and totally sublime, but I balked at calling these wonderful fish trash, Maria Finn wrote at Civil Eats in 2015. I talked to her about it, and she agreed 100%. But the question is, what else should we call them? Underutilized isn't sexy, bycatch is too political. Fish without a market, underloved. Underloved might be a term still applied to the fish in the southeast sport fishery. Residents and non-resident anglers combine to catch just over 12,000 black cod per year in the southern southeast inside sport fishery the board decided to limit, according to the Alaska Department of Fish and Game. The commercial catch in the area is over 502,000. The waste in this case is more likely in catching the fish commercially and shipping them south to be eaten instead of flying fishermen north to Alaska to catch their own fish and take them home to eat. A host of studies of fisheries around the world have concluded that labor-intensive sport fisheries reap more value from the resource than efficient commercial fisheries. A